separatism now. So that's my concern. If we approve this and then there's further lot developments, of course, they'll have to come before as a preliminary plat, but does this approval then set a precedence for what would be considered acceptable with additional plats?
Justification of not approving something similar in this area for not to be arbitrary. You'd have to have reasons why if you approve this tonight, but maybe something very similar in the same area was come before you again, there'd have to be reasons if you were not going to.
I think for me, what is more concerning is lack of utility. So septic, that can, there's an avenue to do that. I think for me, it's lack of water and electricity.
The infrastructure.
Right, it's the infrastructure. So the road, so CREC is here.
Yeah.
So, you know, the road is one thing. So it's city lots, but is that up to the city to maintain Burris and Jardot?
Yes, that.
So the
'cause it is-
city would be required
that-
to maintain Burris and Jardot to a travelable roadway so that you could provide emergency services to these lots. I would also assume that I don't know, maybe I'm wrongly, I'm assuming that if they're in the city limits, that they would also provide trash service here.
Yes.
So you'll have trash service to this location. CREC would provide electrical. So then it's really water, which is why my question about is there a water source that perhaps one of the local rural water districts could provide water to these locations, but that's not known at this point.
To my knowledge, there is not.
Okay.
It's pure well water, and I believe that the neighborhood in this area has well water.
Okay.
Yes.
To my knowledge.
And just so y'all are aware, the canyons are off of a gravel road, off of Burris. That is gravel there.
But they have a paved entrance.
Yes.
It's not, I mean, there is a way to get into the canyons where you don't have to go down gravel.
Correct. Yeah, 'cause I
Here you
believe
would
they-
have to go down gravel to get to these lots. So I think that's what Commissioner Shanahan is really alluding to. The floodplain issue, I'm not as concerned about because as I asked and staff confirmed, an earth change permit would have to be done. So that would have to be addressed. Anytime there would be a building permit done on the property, it would have to be addressed. So that's one that I'm not as concerned about, simply because I think we do have a mechanism in place for it. It's just, you know, it's kind of a buyer beware when there are no city utilities.
So legal. With three of us present tonight, how many would have to actually vote to be able to have an approval of this preliminary plat?
You'd have to have 2 yeses
You have to have 2 yeses. Okay.
for it to be approved.
Right. Okay, I thought so, but wanted to make sure.
I think it is concerning a bit, some of the issues you raised about what obligations does the city take on. I don't know how those get compensated by this neighborhood, so it just gets spread out, that obligation gets spread out across the city, the taxpayers.
Right.
Which, I don't know how significant that is, but it's something.
Well, and you know, I think one of the things as planning commissioners that we're asked to look at is, you know, is this particular piece of land, is it appropriate for this zoning? That's what we looked at in the past, and we said, yes, it is, because of the way development's changing. So the city council also looked at it and said, we agree with the recommendation. So I'm not surprised to see it come forward. Yeah, like I say, just a little concerning about what's there if someone were to purchase it, but then again, it's, you know, it is buyer beware.
Mm-hmm.
How do they know what to be aware of?
So there is this plat, and there will be a final plat, but this plat does show that there are no easements, and no easements being dedicated, which would indicate there are
No
no
utilities.
utilities.
That's a rather sophisticated buyer to be making that kind of deep dive, right?
Depends. But we did that was one of our requirements, that we wanted the note of that on here. There are no easements this time.
Yeah.
So if there are no easements at this time, and in the future, the city were to come in and extend utility this far, then they would want to take the easement back.
We would have to then at that time purchase those easements, and we'd have to contact each property owner and obtain that, and it could cost, if that owner is not going to give it, obviously. So it will be a cost if that ever happens.
So that would be another thing for kind of a buyer beware. If someone were to come in here and build, they should be aware that if I put my house at a certain distance and I think that the road's always going to be that far from my house, the road may not be that far. There may be utilities that come in and all of a sudden I've got development and things closer to my home than I really wanted it. But, you know, it's kind of one of those things you just have to kind of take as a case-by-case basis.
I will state for the road purposes, we are asking for a dedication of 40 feet. That is required on all section lines. This is 2 section line roads. So 40 feet will be dedicated, and that includes the 33 feet statutory right-of-way requirements by
Okay.
state statute.
Okay.
So those will be, you know, if that develops out and we pave, we have that right-of-way.
And then is that the dashed line that I see on here? On the frontage?
I believe it's a solid.
The
It's
solid line
and
is?
they put 40
Yeah.
Okay.
feet,
Oh, there we go.
and then there's a dash that says a 33.
Got it.
And I even think it says it's gravel too on there.
Yes, it does.
It does.
So CREC has no easements either then, is what you're saying?
Correct. From the survey, they're stating that there are no easements. We
Mhm.
have asked numerous times to confirm that, and we were told there are none, and that's why they had to put on the plat a note that there are none.
It seems a reasonable assumption, though, if you're going to grant an easement if you want electricity to your house. So,
It would certainly be to the benefit of the property owner
mhm.
to be able to have those utilities,
Yeah.
provide that amenity. Other questions? Any more discussion or perhaps a motion?
I'd make a motion to accept the findings and approve it. The proposed preliminary plat is presented.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary plat as submitted. We shall now vote via roll call.
Chair Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanahan,
Abstain.
Commissioner Prather.
Yes.
Motion passes 2 to 1 abstention.
Correct.
The next item on the agenda is consideration, discussion, and possible text amendment to Chapter 23 Land Development Code, Article 7, Signs, Division 2, District Sign Regulations, Section 23-197 through Section 23-200.
All right. All right, so for the final item tonight is the text amendment that was brought to you back in August 2nd meeting and was tabled to today. Y'all asked for a request of a case of the reason, the purpose of the text amendment, the intent, and wanted more information. So the original intent was to review and recommend a text amendment to the Land Development Code, Chapter 23, Article 7, Signs, Division 2, District Sign Regulations, Section 23-197 through 23-200, which covers the office, commercial shopping, commercial business, and commercial general districts within the provisions of the Land Development Code. So, here's a little necessity. Since the beginning of the 2020, we just went back the past 3 years, there have been 57 variances have been requested. Of those 57, 12 of them have been significantly concerning the numbers of signs in the commercial districts. That's approximately 21% of our variances in the past 3 years. In 2020, we had 3 of the 21 variances in the commercial districts were concerning signs. In 2021, 4 of the 18 variants requested were for commercial district signs. And then just to date in 2022, 5 of the 18 applications so far have been for commercial district signs. Okay, all right, now I got a little spiel. The intent of the proposed text change is to address a common reoccurrence of variance requested to the Board of Adjustments for the number of signs permitted on a structure in business in a commercial zoning district. Based on the past 3 years alone, as stated before, there has been 21% of the cases in relation to the number of signs in commercial zoned areas. In your packet, you'll see that Appendix 1 has a sampling of a few of those. Staff's process for this proposal was first to research and see what other communities' approaches were to the sign regulations. A few cities that we looked at that are also in your packet as Appendix 2 was the City of Edmond, Oklahoma, City of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, City of Leavenworth, Kansas, and the City of Tyler, Texas. In most examples, the signs were broad and didn't have any limitation on size and the number of signs. Staff then constructed the text amendment to have the smallest possible impact to the current code, but addressing the requests given by the Board of Adjustment. The proposed text amendment is a draft amendment to the change a subsection in each of the 4 commercial districts listed in the sign code. The most noticeable changes is in the verbiage used for the permitted number of signs from 1 of each sign type per street frontage per business to the permitted number of signs are as followed: a monument or pole sign, 1 per parcel per street frontage, and other permitted structural signs, 1 wall sign per each sign of the structure, except when multiple businesses share an exterior wall, in which case 1 sign per business. There are currently 40 types of signs listed in our sign code chapter. The proposed text amendment only addresses structural signs. In most cases, this means wall signs. So as you can see on this slide, this is the comparison of the proposed changes with the current and the proposed. We're just adding the verbiage of what kind of structural sign here, and it is 1 wall sign for the office district. Now, the comparison of the commercial shopping district, we added a little bit more information. As you can see, comparison for the 1 wall sign per each side of the structure, except when multiple businesses share an exterior wall, in which case 1 wall sign per business. And in how it's currently written is other permitted structural signs, 1 sign per business. So we elaborated on the structural entity of it. Commercial business, as you can see, was very broad with the lengthy 1 of each sign type per street frontage per business, with a total number of pole signs limited to 1 per street frontage. We addressed this for subsection C, clarifying 1 pole sign, and then the structural sign we addressed. Similarly to the commercial general district, we define monument signs and structural signs. We also added the gasoline canopy signs because that's where they're allowed as a permitted use. We do currently have a few gas stations in other districts, but it is it's a legal non-conforming use. Here is an example of a variance that went in March of 2021, 2021, forgetting dates. This was addressing that they wanted one sign per side. This is at the corner of Hall of Fame and
Perkins Road.
yes, thank you. This is Chick-fil-A. Most of y'all know. It's in a parking lot. It is double street frontage. So the variance was for 2 additional signs for the traffic that goes through that shopping center there, which the current code does not allow. Here's the most recent case that we have that was brought to the Board of Zoning Appeals, is Ted's Tacos and Cantinas. This was approved. All of them have been approved. I forgot to mention that. All of them have been approved with no objections for these signs through the Board of Adjustments. 2 of the signs, as you can see, would have been allowed in the new, but they had to request because they have 3. So their variance request was for 2 signs. This is another example that this would still require a variance with the proposed signs code changes because of the logo and then the channeling letters is considered 2 and they're not together. This is an example of
On that last one?
yes.
Under the new proposal, that wouldn't have to come for a variance?
It would.
Would?
Yes, this would. This one would. This one wouldn't.
Okay.
And then this one, yes or no? The way I read
Way it
this,
has-
I read this would be yes, because you've got the one sign, which is the circular sign is on one side, and then the other street frontage there has 2 signs. So if we're going to do one per side, if you have 2 on a side, it would be needing to have a variance, much like the Huntington Jewelers that we just looked at, correct?
It would be a variance for having 2 on the frontage, the side, and the side
Yep.
would be okay.
Right,
Yes.
okay.
And this one would have to,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
goodness.
the
diamond, because of the diamond logo separate from the wording. it
Right,
would
that would have to
variance
be-
still on the
yeah.
proposed change.
and then the last one?
So the last one, this would require a variance with the code proposed changes just for the variation of signs that they have and they're not together. Because I meant to mention the proximity of them together, we can consider them as a whole. So they would include that space, and that if they're close enough, we could consider as one sign as long as it doesn't exceed the sign requirements.
The square footage of
Yeah,
the sign
the square
requirement.
footage.
Gotcha,
For instance,
right.
the jeweler one again,
Oh, yeah.
Huntington that has smaller underneath it, that was all.
That's all, because it all fits in the, what do we have, is it 200 square feet?
Oh, I don't even
I'm gonna
remember.
I'm gonna missay that, but, yeah, as a square footage area per sign.
Yes.
And as long as it's under that, it's considered 1.
Yes. And then, as mentioned, this would require a variance.
Would it
With
not
the-
require a variance if the plumbing, electrical, and heating and cooling were owned by 3 separate companies?
If they were owned by separate companies, it would not need a variance.
Because each, like a shopping strip, each
Yep.
one can have one in the front.
Which is covered in our current code, but
They also have not just those 3, they also
Yeah.
have.
There's 5
Yeah.
total on
There's
that.
a bunch on
One
there,
on
yeah.
each side as well.
yes. Do y'all have any questions for staff?
Well, the last example of lock supply, you said, or I want to understand, with the text amendment, would that still require a variance?
Yes, this example would.
Was any consideration given to the square footage of the wall? It's not as if these are clustered together. I don't know, I'm just
If I
asking.
remember correctly, that was the square footage of the facility is large, and I believe also because they have different areas of the store. So if you're an electrician, you're gonna go to one department, if you're a plumber, you're going to another. So it's, in essence, 3 businesses in one, and that was also a consideration.
And these are considered larger square footages than a directional sign. So it just lumped it into a wall sign size.
Okay, I missed something there. So, under the text amendment, this would still require variance, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Because the signs are
Right, no, I
separated.
understand that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, was consideration given the amount of
The variance.
space?
The
There's-
variance was
yeah.
granted, to my knowledge, because one, they considered the size of the building, and like I said, also because they have different entrances of each department as well.
No, I have no problem with the variance being
No, I'm just
given.
giving you kind of like they were.
Exa-
their
Yeah, I'm just thinking to avoid having to bring this before the Board of Adjustment.
Right. So staff, as mentioned earlier, we wanted to do a minimal impact to the current code as it is and the intent of it. We wanted to just clean it up a little bit for about, I think it was about half is what I figured of what we have received of the number of signs per side. Kind of cleans up a few of the cases. To try to eliminate this case, it would require a more in-depth code amendment.
This is a very specialized case.
Yes. 'cause
It would be
you're-
similar to if you had like a Walmart or a
Yes.
Lowe's and you wanted to say lumber's over here, pharmacy's over there. So it's a little bit more of a wayfinding. Those types of things, I think, when you get to kind of, and Lock isn't necessarily a big box, but when you're looking at big box stores and you want to try to do the wayfinding from the parking lot so you know where, I'm going to park closest to the thing I want to go to, right? It still seems to me like those would be difficult to try to dictate within the code.
Right. And well, then we do. We consider those directional signs because they're directing people where to go. And they have a certain square footage, but if they exceed that, they fall into the current one wall or wall sign, 200 square feet parameters versus the.
I would say the majority, or at least half would be like the Chick-fil-A situation.
Yep.
That we would be resolving by this text amendment. It wouldn't be resolving all because then you would have a more broader text amendment.
Yes.
Kind of keep it narrow, to alleviate some of the hardships.
Well, I do have a question, which I think is probably more of a clarification. So if there were something that had a lot of glass frontage on it, and it was a vinyl sign as opposed to a wall-mounted, like a structural one like this, does it still fall under the signage?
No, that would fall under a temporary. It would be a banner at that point, and we have our own codes for those.
For a banner. So like if I'll try to think of an example. If someone were to, so here's the example. So say at like one of the strip malls, if someone had the structural sign up above that was lit, and then there's all this glass frontage, and they put another sign down here, is that two signs on one? Or is that just the one that's the structural sign above?
So are you saying like a wall, like a window decal?
Yeah, like a window decal, like a vinyl sign that's not temporary, it's permanent. It's not a promotional sign. It would be like a permanent sign.
Sidebar. Okay. All right.
That's permanent. So
Oh,
it would not be a
so-
banner or temporary.
Okay, so window sign, the definition, window signs mean any sign of a permanent nature that is painted on or permanently attached to the glass or other transparent surface of a window or door.
What is permitted by that?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on.
Can you do both? Can you do two?
That's the question.
Or is that, so is it one sign or is it two signs? Would it,
Let's see. Yes.
Become like
Why? Is this Because this is an exempt.
But not visible from the public.
Oh.
So that one. Official or traffic sign. Ordinance. Small premise. What's our way signs?
Yeah. So let's see. Let's go this way. This is general standards. Because that's what
Temporary sales.
that's what I figured. Because that's how I've considered them.
To clarify, so is the question if it's not a
If it's not structural,
well, right, but let's say it's a vinyl and we're saying Christmas sale or
so to me,
spring
that would be a temporary
that
promotional
falls under
sign.
the
So
temporary.
promotional sign would be different than a permanent sign.
you're just it's not really permanent, you're saying they just leave it up. There's not just like a short period, it's up all
Right,
the time.
right. So if I wanted to have my business name up top, you know, Jana's Junk, and I had Jana's Junk down below too. You know, it's hard up above and it's lit, and then down below I've got it
Restrictions on when.
either painted or vinyl affixed to the glass.
Would be it.
Right. I would too. Usually that's what we would require, and then.
From
If-
a glance, which I'm not confident giving a 100% answer on this, at a glance, technically it looks like it would only be allowed for 30 days. But I could look into that for you more in depth
Okay,
and give you, I would not feel comfortable telling that's,
okay, that's fine.
yeah.
And I thought about this as I was driving around town
Thank you.
this morning. So
Yes,
That would-
and usually most people don't end up pulling permits for those.
right,
So that would require code enforcement to go out and
notice
enforce
that someone could probably complain and notice it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So that, okay. And I do want to thank you for going through the examples and saying what would be allowable and what would not, because that helped paint a pretty clear picture to me. Because that's going to be my question. Okay, I understand it looks like 2 of these do and 2 of these don't. So that was very helpful to understand. Okay. I had another question. So this is another one, and again, apologize, I'm not thinking about these early enough to give you notice to prepare for the meeting. So when we're looking at some of these items, the commercial general district, would it be possible just to look at an overlay of the districts? Would you be able to have access to that we could just take a quick glance and kind of see maybe where commercial general is
Hang on. This is our.
versus, so we've got commercial shopping, we've got commercial business, and then we've got
type.
commercial general. So we're treating them differently if I'm following correctly. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, and that's how it was originally intended for each district. So
Okay.
we wanted to keep it that way because
Okay.
that would, it'd require a little bit
Right.
more change. All right. Whoops. All right, so your light pinks is your CB, your medium pinks, reds is commercial general, and then your darker red is your commercial shopping.
Okay. Thank you. That does help.
Mostly along 6 and Perkins.
Yeah, some per, yeah. A little bit on Boomer.
And yeah,
Okay.
and Boomer.
All right. Those are all the questions I had.
You've probably answered this, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So the intent of the proposed text change is to address a common recurrence of variances requested by the board for the number of signs permitted. How often do those requested variances get rejected? Like never?
They have not. They have,
Okay.
I do not, yeah, they haven't, they've approved them all.
Okay.
Since 2020.
Yeah, since 2020. I
They've all
didn't
been
go any further back.
Okay. So the purpose of this really is just to say, we're going to approve those anyway. Let's just change the code so that we don't even have to talk about it.
Well,
It-
when you start getting that many variances, you really need to look, you need to look at their signed code.
Mm-hmm.
And the court will look at, is this really, are you really enforcing it really?
Yeah.
If not, you're really just making a person go through hardship of coming and requesting a variance when you're gonna grant them anyway and have been granted for at least 3 years. So that's something to consider.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Makes
the need of
sense.
the community has changed. If we having more requests of a variance for a certain topic,
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, the code is a living, breathing document, and
Yeah.
it
no,
needs
that
to
makes sense.
adapt with.
Mhm.
And if there's multiple variances to that code should
Yep.
meet the community's needs.
Well, I will say, I believe I was the one who was most vocal earlier when we looked at this and wanted to get a little bit more information. And I do want to thank you for providing the information. And I feel like that the updates are just as were stated by staff and by legal counsel, that this is a point at which it's a good time to kind of reflect back and say, what's the trend been? Everything looks like we haven't been denying this, so it's been passing through the variants that have been granted, and it does. It's more time and cost and delay for development to happen. And I really think, given taking another look at where these zonings are and where we're talking about, I think it is appropriate. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So, any other discussions or questions, or perhaps entertaining a motion?
Well, hopefully this is a real quick question, but alternatives 1 and 2, I mean, I know that there is diction and syntax differences, but in essence, what differentiates the two?
Did you say the findings or the alternatives? Which one did you want clarification on?
Well, what's the difference besides the language and the construction of the sentence between alternatives 1 and 2?
Okay.
I read it as the same, but my reading may be incorrect.
Oh, that's if you have recommendations to change to go to city council, to make those changes before it goes to city council.
So we
So
would.
it's like a condition, approval with conditions.
So if we had a definition that we identified in the amendment that we thought should be different than what was presented, the conditional approval.
I understand
Okay.
it is definitely convoluted, the way it's worded, so. But what it is really is you could approve it with recommend additional changes. What staff is. So 1 would be recommend approval, 2, recommend approval with further recommended changes than staff has presented, table it, or not.
Okay. I move we accept the findings, recommend that the city council approve the proposed text amendment as presented.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to accept findings and recommend city council approve the proposed text amendment. We shall now vote. Still going roll call?
Chair Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Prather.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0. Next item on the agenda is presentation by counsel of the city attorney's office regarding state statutes, the Stillwater Code of Ordinances, the zoning code, and cases of interest on planning and zoning matters.
No presentation.
All right, we'll move on to item 4. Miscellaneous items from staff, planning commissioners, or the city attorney for discussion and possible action. The one item we have listed is that the next planning commission meeting is October the 4th. Last item is adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. We'll now vote by roll call.
Chair Phillips,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanahan,
Yes.
Commissioner Prather.
Yes.
Adjourned at 6:18.